Keith Pompey joins us on the
There's
line.
still a mark on the window, by the
There
way.
is. Sixers beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Not much to do this week, Keith, right?
Nah, never anything.
Oh, my God. Is Keith...
Why aren't you in Atlanta or Milwaukee?
Because the Sixers aren't playing there.
Because you cursed the team.
So it's my fault, right?
It's always your fault, Jeff. Keith,
It's one of y'all.
I didn't. Look, I'm not the one who asked the tough questions. Although I will take credit for them.
Keith, it's been a few days. We've been able to digest. I've heard your breakdown. I've heard rumors, exit interviews. What the hell happened?
Man, it was just crazy. I don't know. I think it was a lot of things. I think that they made some poor adjustments or lack of adjustments. I think you had a guy who was shying away from the ball. You had another guy who was missing shots. I just think that they choked, basically. I mean, if you want to be real, they choked. They had the opportunity to win it in, 5 games, and they choked. They choked.
You and I talked about this morning. We talked about it last week. I think we've talked about it every day this week. I'm still not buying that this isn't all Ben Simmons' fault. I believe that there is enough weight to go around as far as responsibility for the loss, but the dominoes fell in my mind because Ben Simmons couldn't hit free throws. And when he couldn't hit free throws, it means he didn't want to touch the ball. And when he didn't want to touch the ball, the rest of the team had to adjust to the fact that they had 4 guys on offense. What's your take on not whether it was Ben Simmons' fault, but whether or not this is fixable for Ben Simmons?
That's the tough part because it's kind of like the little boy that cried wolf. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden the wolf shows up and you don't believe it. I think the problem with Ben, the rhetoric always sounds good. Like after he has a bad game, he always comes back and says, I'm going to do better. I'm going to be more aggressive. And the next time he's not any more aggressive unless they're playing, one of those teams that, are in the lottery. You know what I mean? That's how it goes. But as far as the Sixers, when you hear Doc Rivers saying, we're going to get them in the gym, we're going to do things, well, each summer, Ben Simmons has supposedly been in the gym doing things. And when he comes back, it's always the same player. So when you hear that, it really doesn't give you a lot of confidence that things are going to change. It just doesn't. And that's the one thing. It has to be a wait and see. And it's not even a wait and see for the regular season. It's a wait and see for the playoffs. Not just the playoffs, the second round of the playoffs. Because typically they're going to be way better than the team that they're going to play in the first round. And teams don't defend you, they defend you differently in the playoffs than they do from the regular season. So, it's all those things. If they keep them, it's just going to be a matter of everybody waiting to see what happens next year in the playoffs. And then it's just going to be, if it doesn't work out, it's going to be pie on the Sixers' face. And if it does work out, they can say, yay, we finally got out of the second round. So it's a tough one, man. It's really a tough one.
Keith, I'm going to own this. I wanted to keep Ben here to see if they could make it work. I'm over that. The people who say, but his defense, you can't play defense if you're not on the floor. And
No, you can't.
Clearly something happened, whatever it is. I don't like to always say choke or ascribe motives. Whatever it is, he didn't want the ball at the end of the game. That was clear. And then he wasn't in the game at the end of the game. He had 3 field goal attempts in the whole series. He shot a total of 14 times. He shot 4 times in Game 7.
Hold on. Keith, let me take this one for a second. You did this again with the whole I don't want to say choke. What if what happened to Ben Simmons in the fourth quarter of those games is not a choke? What is?
I don't know what it is.
What other example do you need in any sport than a guy who cannot make a free shot and then is afraid to touch the ball?
A choke implies that it's a one-time thing.
No, it doesn't.
It happened. I don't think.
This is a persistent choke.
I think this is a long-term problem. He doesn't want the ball now. Like, Keith, you were there at Summer League when Ben came out. He shot jumpers. He was aggressive. Now he gets a foot from the basket and he throws the ball out to somebody who's in double coverage, who then has to kick it around on the perimeter to eventually get to somebody who's open, and they get bailed out because somebody hits a shot. So I guess my question is, look, we all thought Daryl Morey thought he moved him, and people forget he thought he was gone, and that didn't happen. So you're obviously selling where he's not at his highest value. But is Ben Simmons a Sixer at the start of next season? No matter what they say about him being fixable?
Let's see, that's the tough one. I think if Ben Simmons is a Sixer at the start of next season, it's because they didn't get what they wanted in the trade. That's it. It's not a matter of fixing. It's hard to fix something when it's mental. You know what I mean? Like, it's up to Ben Simmons. Like, you can have him in the gym forever, shooting 800 jumpers, doing whatever you want. But until he's ready to correct it, it's tough. So I think that if he is a Sixer at the end, it's just because they couldn't get what they thought they could for him.
What do you think the rest of the team's reaction is going to be to him being there if he's there at the beginning of the season? Does this team rally around him, or do you think that there is, right now at least, total reluctance to having him in the game next to them?
Depends on the relationship that they have with him, with some of the guys. Like Magic said, he couldn't be back. He can't bring him back into the locker room. But when you look at the team, like, who's going to be back in the locker room? I mean, Matisse, Shake, Maxey, Joel, Seth, and Tobias for the most part. You know what I mean? The rest of these guys are like basically going to be free agents.
What about Ray John Tucker?
Ray John Tucker too, but I don't even know about him. Like, he was on a two-way deal, so he'll probably become, unless they sign him to one of those crazy deals, he'll be a free agent. But yeah, I get what you're saying. So, it's one of those things where people know that it's a business, and I think that, like, let's just say if he is on the team at the start of the season, I do believe that they're still going to try to push him, but they're trying to get something of value. See, the one thing we got to understand here is that, if you move Ben Simmons, everything that they've done in the past was basically a failure. They tanked for, let's say, 5 years, 4 years, and they had all these lottery picks. We're talking about they got Nerlens Noel at number 6, then they got Michael Carter-Williams at number 11, number 13, and then after that they got Joel Embiid at number 3. Then the next year they got Joel Embiid and Dario Saric, a lottery pick. Then Jahlil Okafor, Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons, all these guys. And now, when it's all said and done, the only one you have is Joel Embiid, and you can't get out the second round. Whereas you got a team like Atlanta, you got a team like Phoenix, who these guys were late lottery picks besides Ayton, right?
And didn't tank the way that the Sixers did.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. So, like, the Sixers tanked. These guys didn't tank like that, and now they're playing for the conference finals. They're probably going to go to the NBA finals. So, if you get rid of Ben and don't get anything in return, it's like, wow, that was the dumbest idea in the world. So I think they're trying to alleviate that.
Is it better to keep Ben so you don't have to admit failure, or send him out and cut your losses at this point?
I think, it depends on who you are. You know what I mean?
Daryl Morey would probably want to cut his losses because it's not his guy. But the front office, you would think, is more wedded to it because, like you said, for them, sending Ben Simmons out of here is an admission of a larger failure of their strategy since the start.
Well, it's not really the front office because, Daryl Morey is in charge of the front office, and a lot of those guys weren't here at the beginning of it. Some of them might have been there. Some of them were there for, like, the Colangelo years, which were a blunder and draft picks. But for the most part, I think it's more or less ownership than anyone else.
That's what I meant.
Because ownership is the one, they're the ones who signed off on it, yeah.
They're the ones who, decided with Sam Hinkie when they started this that they were going to take the heat from the NBA and tank. And look, we've had so much focus on that I feel like Doc hasn't gotten some of the scrutiny that he should. And some people who didn't want Doc hired would tell you now that he's got 29 losses with a chance to clinch a playoff series, the most by any head coach in history. Now, I texted Jeff through the series. I didn't mind some of his rotations, but I didn't understand his end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter at all in any game. He would go to the all bench team, and I would text Jeff, and it would happen every time. They would either have a lead, and the lead would be cut down so that Atlanta had momentum going into the fourth. They'd be tied, and Atlanta would go on a run. They'd be down by 7 each game. What was Doc doing with the rotation at times? And I understand he was hampered by Ben and what was going on there, but it just didn't make sense to me to keep your backup lineup on in the playoffs when you have stars on other teams who don't come off the court. Kevin Durant played every minute of that game that Brooklyn played in the last series.
That was the longest question that I've ever heard, and almost as long as your text string during the game.
Because I don't understand. Like, I don't claim to be the basketball expert.
Yeah.
But
okay, let's let the basketball expert
I don't get
answer.
it.
Go.
I don't know. In the question. only joking with you. Now, it comes to a point like that. That was really mind-boggling to me. And because, I kept, when in the playoffs, you always think of, guys in the first round, they may go 9 guys. And then in the second round, they may go 7 or 8, right? And he kept toting guys out there. And a lot of it was doing with he didn't want to get his guys tired. I think he wanted to rest them up. He wanted them to play in the certain minutes range. But I think that it was kind of sort of like he was coaching as if he was extremely confident that they were going to go way deeper in the playoffs. And he didn't want his guys wearing down, right? That's what it seems to me.
Well, he didn't have to worry about that after all, did he?
Yeah, he didn't, and it came back to haunt him. And then if you notice, what happens is, it seemed like he tried a little bit in Game 7 to have them play a little bit more minutes, like their rest time wasn't as long as it normally was, but they were gassed. I mean, you can tell they were gassed. I mean, so I think that backfired on him. I mean, to be honest with you, I was a little shocked that he played as many guys as he did. I also thought that he kept trying to see, okay, so the first game you have it, and you have the first 2 games, Maxey is the guy. Then Maxey plays poorly. So then all of a sudden you bring in Shake Milton. Shake Milton is like bringing that energy, and everything's great. Everything's working well. But then next thing you know, you take Maxey out, and then the next 2 games, Shake can't buy a basket. Then you bring Maxey back in, and then Maxey does well. And then in Game 7, Maxey goes back to being a rookie again, which happens. So I felt like he wasn't 100% sure with people, nor did he have a lot of he didn't want to play his starters that many minutes, but it came back to bite them in the tail, because you are right. It was one of those things when he had the starters in there. It was a matter of, okay, fellas, I need y'all to get a 20-point lead. We know when you come back, we're only going to be up 3, but you're going to be well rested, and let's close the game out.
All right.
And to me, that's what it was.
If you based on what you saw, especially in the playoffs, who's the starting point guard Game 1 of the regular season next year?
Based off of people on the current roster right now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I guess you may have to go with Tyrese Maxey. Based on what I saw. Now, here's the thing, though. If you want to go with veteran leadership or something like that, you would say George Hill. But based off of what I saw, I guess you have to go with Tyrese Maxey. I mean, I think you have to.
Well, that's my next. That's my next question. Is George Hill going to be here next year? Was it?
Yeah, he's on the. I mean, I think he will. I think he will be.
You don't think if there's a trade to be had, George Hill gets rolled into that trade? Do you think he was worth having around?
If you use them the way you say you're going to use them, yeah, I don't think they did. Here's the thing. I always notice, basketball, I know you could say you can have one dominant player in basketball, right? And he could win you a championship, right? They say that on the high school level. But when you look at a guy like George Hill, even when George Hill was in his prime, when he played with Indiana, I never turned on the TV to say, hey, man, I got to see what my man George Hill's about to do. Like it was always about Roy Hibbert and Paul George, right? And then you look there and you say, okay, George Hill is a point guard. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He plays pretty good D, and he'll hit an open shot from time to time. That's when George Hill was in his prime. But then you bring George Hill on a bench unit that's basically struggling, that's getting ran out the gym before he even came there, and then you expect him to elevate it. And then people saying, oh, he's looking bad. What's wrong with him? Why is he looking bad? Well, that's just how it is. That's it. Like, you can't expect a guy to play with dudes who are struggling and expect him to become the eraser. So then he looks bad. But initially, I thought the idea was you bring him in, you take the ball handling and everything off of Ben, right? And George Hill will be the guy. And it just didn't happen that way. And they had him coming off the bench, and he was playing with guys who were struggling. That's how it goes,
Where's Joel Embiid's head after all this? He went out and played on a torn meniscus. Says he gave everything he had. Definitely tried to make improvements over last season. Clearly thought this would be their year. Where is he right now?
I mean, he's frustrated, I guess, a little bit, but I mean, it looked like to me that, he gave his all. He's the one guy who didn't get booed. Actually, he got a standing ovation when he walked off the court. I mean, right now, if you're Joel, you're saying to yourself, like, hey, let's see what they can do, when they get better. And here's the thing. Joel knows that as good as this team was supposed to be, that he even said this, and he wasn't really being critical of the team. He said the team they had 2 years ago was the best team when they had Jimmy Butler and they had J.J. Redick. So if you're Joel, if you're the 76ers and you're Joel, you want to know what they're going to bring out there to help elevate you guys. Because, no offense, but I felt like what the Sixers did in the regular season was fool's gold. I mean, yes, they had the best record in the East, but we both, I think all three of us will agree that they were the third best team in the East, as far as talent-wise.
And that's not second guessing. How many times did you come on the show and we talked about that, ranking the teams?
Yeah.
That, the Nets and the Bucks all along. That could the Sixers beat them, keep up with them, and it seemed to be injuries that stopped those teams from doing what everybody thought they would.
Yeah, and I think Joel knew that. I think he knew that. I mean, I think, you go out there and you try to give it that old college try. Everything's great, this and that. But, this team had a lot of holes.
All right, well, look, we got to go, but there's a couple things that I know are constant. One is that if you want to get your Sixers news or your NBA news, you always got to open the Inquirer, which I'm old school, so it's the newspaper, but you can do it online, and catch out Keith Pompey. And second, there's always the podcast, which is the best podcast in the business. However, we moved to a new studio this week, and I'm guessing that you must have delivered my Michelob Ultra to the old studio because it's not sitting here either.
Yeah, let's do a wager on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Keith, we'll have you back on to talk about it. We hope you get a little break now that the season's over. Look forward to reading everything you put out.
All right, thank you, fellas. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.